command was clear. "Rex, attack!" It was supposed to be a simple canine training drill. Another day, another command. A simple test of obedience for the department's top K9. But when the handler gave the command to attack, something unexpected happened. The powerful German Shepherd froze, and instead of lunging, he ran straight toward the old man, not in aggression but in heartbreak. What the officers witnessed next left them speechless. None of them knew who this old man was. The crowd gasped. The officers shouted. But the moment the old man whispered a single word, "Buddy," everything stopped. What followed left everyone in tears. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun glimmered over the training field, painting streaks of gold across the dew-kissed grass. Rows of uniformed officers stood tall, their German shepherds sitting obediently by their sides. The air carried the scent of discipline, leather, polish, and purpose. It was more than a drill. It was a showcase of trust, loyalty, and power. In the front row, one dog drew everyone's attention, a striking shepherd with amber eyes that seemed to see everything. His name was Rex, the pride of the department's K9 unit. The crowd gathered along the fence, murmuring with excitement as the announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, today you'll witness the incredible obedience and precision of our finest K9s." Applause erupted as the handlers gave commands, and one by one the dogs performed flawlessly. They leapt over barriers, dashed through tunnels, and retrieved objects with lightning speed. But when Rex took the field, silence fell. His focus was razor sharp, his movements smooth, his loyalty absolute. Officer Mark, Rex's handler, gave subtle hand gestures, and the shepherd responded instantly: sit, stay, attack, return. Each move was executed with military perfection. "That's my boy," Mark murmured with pride. Behind him, the police chief nodded in approval. "No doubt, Rex is our best." Cameras clicked, capturing the perfect harmony between man and dog. The demonstration continued, drawing cheers and admiration. Mothers clapped, children pointed in awe, and officers exchanged proud smiles. But then came the captain's voice again, calm, authoritative, and final. "Now for the last exercise, the controlled attack demonstration." The tone shifted. This was the test that proved a dog's obedience above instinct, loyalty above fear. Mark tightened his grip on Rex's leash, feeling the dog's muscles tense with anticipation. "You ready, partner?" he whispered. Rex's ears perked, tail steady, eyes fixed ahead. None of them could have known that this routine drill was about to become something unforgettable, a moment that would test not just Rex's training, but his heart. The murmurs of the crowd quieted as the captain lifted his hand. "For the next part of the test," he announced, "we'll need a volunteer." A few hesitant hands went up, mostly from young men eager for the thrill of being part of the show. But before anyone could step forward, an elderly man sitting alone on a nearby bench caught the captain's eye. He wore a faded green jacket with a small U.S. flag patch on the sleeve, the kind only veterans carried with quiet pride. "You, sir," the captain called out. "Would you be willing to help us demonstrate the final test?" The man looked up, startled. "Me?" he asked softly, glancing around as if hoping someone else would stand. The crowd chuckled encouragingly. After a brief hesitation, he nodded and slowly stood. His back was slightly bent, his steps careful. "Sure, if it helps," he said with a faint smile. Mark adjusted Rex's harness as the old man was guided to the center of the field. "Stay calm," the captain reminded him. "Our dogs are trained professionals. You'll be completely safe." The man gave a small nod, though his eyes betrayed unease. He stood under the sunlight, his hands tucked nervously into his jacket pockets. Mark crouched beside Rex, meeting his gaze. "Target marked," he whispered, giving the familiar command signal. The German shepherd stiffened, muscles tightening. His breathing deepened but something in his eyes flickered. His gaze darted from the captain to the old man and back again. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. "Rex, attack!" Mark commanded, but the dog didn't move. He stood still, ears twitching, head tilting slightly to the side. Another order came, sharper this time. "Attack!" Instead of lunging, Rex lowered his tail and let out a soft whine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mark frowned. "Rex?" he called, confused. But then, before anyone could react, the dog began to move, not with aggression, but with trembling recognition, slowly padding toward the old man, eyes filled with something no one could understand. A wave of silence swept over the field. The officers exchanged puzzled glances, unsure whether to intervene or wait. Rex had stopped halfway between Mark and the old man, his paws rooted in place, his body trembling slightly. The old man stood motionless, his hands still in his pockets, eyes wide with disbelief. For a moment, time itself seemed to freeze. The captain's voice broke the stillness. "Handler, control your K9!" he barked. Mark tightened his grip on the leash. "Rex, attack!" His command cut sharply through the air, but the German shepherd didn't respond. Instead, Rex lowered his head, whining softly, tail curling between his legs, a clear sign of inner conflict. The crowd began to whisper, confusion spreading like wildfire. "Is he malfunctioning?" one spectator murmured. Another chuckled nervously. "Guess even dogs have off days." But Mark knew better. Rex wasn't confused, and he was feeling something. His partner had never disobeyed an order before, not once in years of service. Something about the old man was breaking through layers of conditioning and training. Mark called again, softer this time. "Rex, what's wrong, boy?" Rex's ears twitched at the sound of his voice, but his gaze remained locked on the old man. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he took another slow step forward. Not with aggression, but with a quiet, trembling curiosity. His whine deepened into a soft, almost sorrowful cry. "Stand down," the captain shouted, stepping forward. "That animal's out of control." Two officers moved to restrain Rex, but Mark raised a hand. "Wait," he said firmly, his gut telling him something wasn't right. The dog's instincts were never wrong. Not once. Rex finally reached the old man and stopped right in front of him. The shepherd lifted his paw hesitantly and placed it on the man's knee, eyes glistening. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The old man's lips quivered as he whispered one single word that made Mark's blood run cold. "Buddy?" The word hung in the air like a ghost from another lifetime. "Buddy?" The old man's voice cracked with disbelief, his eyes filling with tears. Rex froze, ears perked, his breathing quickening. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then slowly, the German shepherd stepped closer and rested his head against the old man's chest. The crowd went silent. No one dared to speak. The man's trembling hands hovered for a moment. Then finally they found courage. He knelt down and wrapped his arms around the dog, pulling him close like something long lost and miraculously found. "Buddy, is it really you?" he whispered, his voice shaking. Rex whimpered softly, pressing harder into the embrace. Mark stood frozen, watching the scene unfold in disbelief. That name, Buddy, echoed in his mind. It wasn't random. Rex had reacted to it instantly. "How does he know that name?" Mark murmured under his breath. The captain frowned, motioning for the officers to stay back. The tension that filled the air moments ago had shifted. Now it was heavy with emotion. The old man's shoulders trembled as he held the dog tighter. "You're alive," he whispered, voice breaking. "After all these years. You're really alive." Rex licked his hand gently, eyes filled with warmth and recognition. It wasn't obedience, it was love, pure and undeniable. The dog's tail wagged slowly, cautiously, as if afraid this moment might vanish if he moved too fast. Mark took a careful step forward. "Sir?" he asked softly. "You know this dog?" The old man nodded through tears. "Know him?" He gave a shaky laugh. "Son, I raised him. We served together. His name was Buddy, until the day he disappeared." The captain's stern expression softened. The officers lowered their guard. In that quiet moment, surrounded by stunned silence, one truth became painfully clear. This wasn't disobedience. This was a reunion fate had been holding on to for years. The captain stepped closer, confusion etched across his face. "What do you mean you raised him?" he asked. The old man looked up, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Years ago," he began softly, "I was part of the county's search and rescue team. This dog, Buddy, was my partner. We trained together, worked together, saved lives together. He wasn't just my dog. He was family." His voice faltered as memories flooded back. But one night during a flood rescue mission, everything went wrong. The crowd listened in stunned silence. Even the officers, once rigid and disciplined, found themselves drawn into the story. The old man continued, his tone trembling but clear. There was chaos everywhere. A family was trapped in a submerged vehicle. I sent Buddy in first. He never hesitated. He pulled the child to safety, then went back for the mother. But before I could reach him, a wave hit us. I got knocked out. When I woke up, he was gone. Mark's throat tightened. He glanced down at Rex and or Buddy, who sat quietly beside the old man as if remembering every word. The dog's eyes shimmered, his ears twitching with faint recognition. I searched for weeks, the old man whispered. Posted flyers, called shelters, drove across counties. But there was nothing. I thought he'd drowned. His voice broke and he covered his face with a trembling hand. Losing him was like losing a part of myself. The captain exchanged a glance with Mark, realization dawning. When we found Rex, Mark said slowly. He was astray, wounded, malnourished, but still obedient. We thought he was abandoned. The old man looked up sharply. You didn't find him. He found you, he said softly, his voice filled with bittersweet truth. The crowd remained silent, every heart caught in the fragile space between heartbreak and miracle. What were the odds? After all the years, all the distance, the lost dog and the broken man had found each other again. Not by command, but by destiny. The old man's voice grew distant, his eyes glazing with memory as if the present had melted away. I remember the first day I met him, he whispered. He was just a pup, timid, scarred, and half-starved when I found him hiding under a burned-out shed. Most people would have walked away, but something in his eyes. He paused, smiling faintly. They were full of fear, but also hope. I took him home, cleaned his wounds, and fed him from my own plate. From that moment, he never left my side. The world around them seemed to fade as the memory unfolded. A younger version of the man, kneeling beside a small German shepherd puppy, wrapping him in an old army blanket. Days passed into years. They trained together, ran through obstacle courses, and learned each other's unspoken language. The old man taught him commands, but more than that, he taught him trust. He was the fastest learner I'd ever seen, the man continued, his voice trembling. But he wasn't just a rescue dog. He could feel people's pain. He'd nudge crying children, guard the wounded, sit quietly beside the grieving. Everyone loved him. His lips quivered into a smile. I used to tell the team, Buddy isn't just a dog. He's the soul that walks beside us. Then the memory darkened. That night during the flood, he whispered, the rain was relentless. The water rose so fast we barely made it out. Buddy saved everyone he could, but when I slipped under, he tried to pull me up. I still remember his paws scratching against my jacket before the current swept him away. His voice broke completely. I screamed his name until my voice gave out. Back in the present, the old man wiped his eyes, his hand trembling as he stroked Rex's fur. I buried an empty collar that night, he said softly. And now, here he is, unalive, Rex whimpered, leaning closer as if remembering too. The bond they'd shared hadn't died in that storm. It had only been waiting, and quietly, for this moment. The field had gone completely still. Even the wind seemed to quiet as the old man and Rex sat together, their reunion radiating something sacred. Officers who had once stood with hands on their weapons now lowered them, their eyes softening. The captain, who moments ago demanded control, stood speechless. Mark swallowed hard, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He'd seen loyalty before, but never like this. Rex, usually so composed and alert, was trembling. His tail wagged faintly, unsurely, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. Then, with a deep, mournful sound that cut through the silence, he let out a long cry. Half whimper, half howl, the kind that carried years of longing. The old man's eyes filled again. He placed both hands on Rex's face and whispered, "You never forgot me, did you?" Mark felt his vision blur. He wasn't refusing the order, he murmured under his breath. He was remembering. The realization hit like a wave. Rex hadn't disobeyed out of confusion or defiance. He had recognized someone he'd loved and lost. Training could be rewritten, but loyalty like this was carved into the soul. The captain finally exhaled and looked down, shaking his head slowly. All these years, and the dog still knew his handler. His voice wavered with emotion. Around them, the crowd stood silent, some wiping their eyes. A mother clutched her child closer, whispering, "That's what love looks like." Rex climbed onto the old man's lap, resting his head against the man's chest. The man held him like something fragile and sacred, his wrinkled hands trembling. "I thought you were gone forever," he whispered. "But you never left me, did you, boy?" In that single moment, The meaning of the entire demonstration changed. It was no longer about obedience, strength, or control. It was about something deeper, something no command could ever break: love, loyalty, and the unspoken promise between a man and his dog that even time could not erase. The sun began to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the training field. The once boisterous crowd stood in reverent silence, watching the old man and Rex sit together like two souls reunited after a lifetime apart. The captain finally broke the silence, clearing his throat softly. "Everyone, stand down," he said. His tone, once commanding, was now gentle. "The demonstration is over." Officers slowly stepped back, their expressions filled with quiet awe. Mark knelt beside Rex, running a hand over the dog's back. "You did the right thing, buddy," he whispered. Rex looked up at him with calm eyes as if to say, "I knew what I was doing all along." The captain walked toward them, his posture softer than before. "Son," he said to the old man, "I've been in this department 25 years and I've never seen anything like that." The old man smiled faintly through his tears. "That's because loyalty like his doesn't come from training," he replied. "It comes from love." Later that evening, inside the precinct, the officers gathered around a monitor replaying the event. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the screen. Each time Rex defied the command, each moment he moved toward the old man, it was all captured in stunning clarity. "He knew," one officer murmured. "He knew exactly who that was." Mark leaned against the desk, still trying to process it. "We need to verify this," the captain said quietly. Within hours, they pulled adoption files, scanned through old rescue records, and matched photos. The results came back undeniable. Same birthmark on the paw, same scar on the ear, same eyes. Rex and the old man were once partners, separated by tragedy and fate. When the captain looked up from the report, his eyes glistened. "We can't call this a failure," he said softly. "We call it a miracle." And in that moment, the entire department silently agreed. The bond they just witnessed was something far greater than duty. It was destiny fulfilled. A few days later, the precinct organized a special event. Not a drill, not a press conference, but something far more meaningful. The word had spread quickly. The canine who defied orders had found his long-lost handler. Reporters gathered near the field, cameras ready, but the atmosphere wasn't that of spectacle. It was reverence. Officers stood in full uniform, their expressions solemn. A flag fluttered gently in the afternoon breeze. The old man, now wearing a neatly pressed jacket adorned with his old rescue badge, stood beside the police chief. His hands trembled slightly as he held the medal he'd once pinned to Buddy's collar years ago. Mark knelt beside Rex, adjusting the dog's vest one last time. "You ready for this, hero?" he whispered with a smile. Rex wagged his tail, calm but alert, as if he understood the importance of the moment. The chief stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Today," he began, his voice carrying through the still air, "we honor more than just service. We honor loyalty, the kind that survives storms, years, and even death itself." Murmurs of emotion rippled through the crowd. "This dog, known to us as Rex and to his true handler as Buddy, reminds us all that courage and love don't fade. They wait for reunion." Applause broke out as the old man stepped forward. Kneeling before Rex, he placed the small, worn medal around his neck. His eyes shimmered. "Welcome home, Buddy," he whispered. The German shepherd leaned in, pressing his head against the man's chest, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. The chief nodded to Mark. "Effective immediately," he announced. "Rex and/or Buddy will be honorably retired from active duty." The officers saluted as the crowd clapped. The old man wiped away tears. "He's earned his rest," he said softly. In that moment, surrounded by uniforms, cameras, and quiet applause, the world seemed to agree. Heroes come in many forms, but none purer than a loyal dog who never forgot where he belonged. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the park in shades of gold and amber. The ceremony had ended hours ago, but the old man stayed behind, sitting quietly on the same weathered bench where fate had reunited him with his lost friend. Rex, or Buddy as he was once called, lay stretched across his lap, his breathing steady and peaceful. Birds sang softly in the distance, and the evening breeze carried the scent of pine and memory. The old man stroked the shepherd's fur gently, his eyes distant. "You came back to me, boy," he whispered. "After all this time, you still remembered." Buddy's ears flicked at the sound of his name, his tail thumping lazily against the ground. He looked up, those familiar amber eyes shining with warmth and recognition. For the first time in years, the old man smiled without sorrow. From across the park, Mark and a few officers stood silently, watching the scene unfold. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. The sight alone said everything words couldn't. "He found his way home," Mark murmured, his voice thick with emotion. The captain nodded beside him. "Some bonds don't break," he replied quietly. "They just find their way back." The old man leaned back on the bench, eyes glistening as the sunset bathed them in light. "Rest now, buddy," he whispered. "No more storms. You're home." The shepherd closed his eyes, letting out a soft sigh of contentment. For once the world felt right again. As the camera slowly panned out, the park fell silent. A single man and his loyal dog framed by the fading sun. The narrator's voice gently echoed, "Loyalty doesn't fade with time, it waits." And as the screen dimmed, the story closed with the familiar words, "If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes love and loyalty write stories no one can ever forget."